Hello students, welcome to the world of Intellectuals Hub. Students, today we are going to study Human Eye and Colorful World of Chapter 2 of Physics. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe the channel for more such videos. Let's start. The Human Eye and the Colorful World. You have studied in the previous chapter about reflection of light by lenses. You also study the nature, position and relative size of the images formed by lenses. How can these ideas help us in the study of the human eye? The human eye uses light and enable us to see objects around us. It has a lens in its structure. What is the function of the lens in the human eye? How do the lenses used in spectacles correct defects of vision? Let us consider this question in this chapter. We have learned in the previous chapter about light and some of its properties. In this chapter, we shall use these ideas to study how of the optical phenomena in nature. We shall also discuss about rainbow formation, splitting of white light and blue color of the sky. The human eye. The human eye is one of the most valuable and sensitive sense organ. It enables us to see the wonderful world and the colors around us. On closing the eyes, we can identify objects to some extent by their smell, taste, sound they make or by touch. It is, however, impossible to identify colors while closing the eyes. Thus, of all the sense organs, the human eye is the most significant one as it enables us to see the beautiful, colorful world around us. The human eye is like a camera. Its lenses system forms an image on the light-sensitive screen called the retina. Light enters the eye through a thin membrane called the cornea. It forms a transparent bulge on the front surface of the eyeball as shown in the figure. The eyeball is approximately spherical in shape and with a diameter of about 2.3 centimeter. Most of the refraction for the light rays entering the eye occur at the outer surface of the cornea. The crystalline lens merely provides the finer adjustment of focal length required to focal object at different distances on the retina. We find a structure called iris behind the cornea. Iris is a dark muscular diaphragm that controls the size of the pupil. The pupil regulates and controls the amount of light entering the eye. The eye lens forms an inverted real image of the object on the retina. The retina is a delicate membrane having enormous number of light-sensitive cells. The light-sensitive cell gets activated upon illumination and generate electrical signals. These signals are sent to the brain via the optical nerve. The brain interprets these signals and finally processes the information so that we perceive objects as they are. Power of accommodation. The eye lens is composed of a fibrous jelly-like material. Its curvature can be modified to some extent by the ciliary muscles. The change in the curvature of the eye lens and thus change its focal length. When the muscles are relaxed, the lens becomes thin. Thus its focal length increases. This enables us to see distant objects clearly. When you are looking at objects closer to the eye, the ciliary muscles contract. This increases the curvature of the eye lens. The eye lens then becomes thicker. Consequently, the focal length of the eye lens decreases. This enables us to see nearby objects clearly. The ability of the eye lens to adjust its focal length is called accommodation. It's called accommodation. However, the focal length of the eye lens cannot be decreased below a certain minimum limit. Try to read a printed page by holding it very close to your eyes. You may see the image behind blur feel strain in the eyes. To see an object comfortably and distantly, you must hold it at about 25 centimeter from the eyes, the minimum distance at which object can be seen most distinctly without strain is called the least distance of distinct vision. It is also called the near point of the eye. For a young adult with normal vision, the near point is about 25 centimeter. The farther point about which the eye can see objects clearly is called the far point of the eye. It is infinity for a normal eye. You may note here a normal eye can see objects clearly that are between 25 centimeter and infinity. Sometimes the crystalline lens of people at old age becomes milky and cloudy. This condition is called cataract. This causes partial or complete loss of vision. It is possible to restore vision through a cataract surgery. Now the defects of vision and their corrections. Sometimes the eye may gradually lose its power of accommodation. In such condition, the person cannot see the object distinctly and comfortably. The vision becomes blurred due to the refractive defects on the eye. There are mainly three common refractive defects of vision, and these are myopia or nearsightedness, hypermetropia or farsightedness, and presbyopia. These defects can be corrected by the use of suitable spherical lenses. We discuss below these defects and their corrections. Now first one is the myopia. Myopia is also known as nearsightedness. A person with myopia can see nearby objects clearly but cannot see distinct objects distinctly. A person with this defect has the far point nearer than infinity. Such a person may see clearly up to a distance of a few meters. In a myopic eye, the image of a distant object is formed in front of the retina, as shown in the figure, and not at the retina itself. This defect may arise due to the excessive curvature of the eye lens or elongation of an eyeball. This defect can be corrected by using a concave lens of suitable power. This is illustrated in figure 11.2. C part. A concave lens of suitable power will bring the image back on to the retina and thus the defect is corrected. Now hypermetropia. Hypermetropia is also known as farsightedness. A person with hypermetropia can see distant objects clearly but cannot see nearby object distinctly. The near point of the person is farther away from the near point, that is 25 centimeters. Such a person has to keep a reading material much beyond 25 centimeters from the eye for comfortable reading. This is because the eye rays from a close by object are focused at the point behind the retina as shown in the figure 11.3 B part. This distinct defect arises either because the focal length of the eye lens is too long or the eyeball has become too small. This defect can be corrected by using a convex lens of appropriate power. This is also illustrated in the figure 11.3 C part. Eyeglasses with converging lens provide the additional focusing power required for forming the lens on the retina. Now the third defect is the presbyopia. The power of accommodation of the eye usually decreases with aging. For most people, the near point gradually recede away. They find it difficult to see nearby object comfortably and distinctly without corrective eyeglasses. This defect is called presbyopia. It arises due to the gradual weakening of the ciliary muscles and diminishing flexibility of the eye lens. Sometimes a person may suffer from myopia and hypermetropia. Such people often require bifocal lens. A common type of bifocal lens consists of both concave and convex lens. The upper portion consists of concave lens. It facilitates distinct vision. The lower portion is a convex lens. It facilitates near vision. These days, it is possible to correct the refractive defects with contact lenses or through surgical interventions. Now, refraction of light through a prism. You have learned how light gets refracted through a rectangular glass slab. For parallel refracting surface, as in a glass slab, the emergent ray is parallel to the incident ray. However, it is slightly displaced laterally. How would light get reflected through a transparent prism? Consider triangular glass prism. It has two triangular bases and three rectangular lateral surfaces. These surfaces are inclined to each other. The angle between its two lateral faces is called the angle of the prism. Let us now do an activity to study the refraction of light through a triangular glass prism. Now a prism is look like as this shown in the figure. Here PE is the incident ray, EF is the refractive ray, and FS is the emergent ray. You may note that a ray of light is entering from air to glass at the first surface AB. The light ray on refraction has bent towards the normal. At the second surface AC, the light ray has entered from the glass to air, hence it has been bent away from normal. Compare the angle of incidence and the angle of reflection at each refracting surface of the prism. Is this similar to the kind of bending that occurs in the glass slab? The peculiar shape of the prism makes the emergent ray bend at an angle to the direction of the incident ray. This angle is called the angle of deviation. In this case, angle D is the angle of deviation. Mark the angle of deviation in the above activity and measure it. Dispersion of white light by glass prism. You must have seen and appreciated the spectacular colors in a rainbow. How could the white light of the sun gives us various colors of the rainbow? Before we take up this question, we shall first go back to the refraction of light through a prism. The inclined refractive surface of a glass prism show exciting phenomena. Let us find it out through an activity. The prism has probably split the incident white light into a band of colors. Note the colors that appear at the two ends of the color band. What is the sequence of color that you see on the screen? The various colors seen as violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and red as shown in the figure. The acronym WIGBOY will help you to remember the sequence of the color. The band of the color component of the light beam is called its spectrum. You might not be able to see all the colors separately. Yet some things make each color distinct from the other. The splitting of light into its component color is called dispersion. You have seen that white light is dispersed into its 7 colors components by a prism. Why do we get these colors? Different colors of light bend through different angles with respect to the incident ray as they pass through a prism. The red light bend the least while the violet the most. Thus the rays of each color emerge along different paths and thus become distinct. It is the band of distinct colors that we see in a spectrum. Isaac Newton was the first to use a glass prism to obtain the spectrum of sunlight. He tried to split the colors of the spectrum of white light further by using another similar prism. However, he could not get any more colors. He then placed a second identical prism in an inverted position with respect to the first prism as shown in this figure. Allowed all the colors of the spectrum to pass through the second prism. He found a beam of white light emerging from the other side of the prism, second prism. This observation gave Newton the idea that the sunlight is made up of 7 colors. Any light that gives a spectrum similar to that of the light is often referred to as white light. A rainbow is a natural spectrum appearing in the sky after a rain shower. It is caused by dispersion of sunlight by tiny water droplets present in the atmosphere. A rainbow is always formed in the direction opposite to that of the sun. The water droplets act like small prisms. They reflect and disperse the incident sunlight that reflect it internally and finally reflect it again when it comes out of the raindrop. Due to the Due to the dispersion of light and internal reflection, different colors reach the observer's eye. You can also see a rainbow on a sunny day when you look at the sky through a waterfall or through a water fountain with the sun behind you. Now, the atmospheric refraction. You might have observed the apparent random wavering or flickering of objects seen through a turbulent stream of hot air rising above a fire or a radiator. The air just above the fire becomes hotter than the air further up. The hotter air is lighter than the cooler air above it and hence has a refractive index slightly less than that of the cooler air. Since the physical condition of the refractive medium, that is air, are not stationary, the apparent position of the object as seen through the hot air fluctuates. This wavering is thus an effect of atmospheric refraction on a small scale in our local environment. The twinkling of stars is a similar phenomenon on a much larger scale. Let us see how we can explain it. Twinkling of stars. The twinkling of star is due to the atmospheric refraction of starlight. The starlight on entering the Earth's atmosphere undergoes refraction continuously before it reaches Earth. The atmospheric refraction occurs in a medium of gradually changing refractive index. Since the atmosphere bends starlight towards the normal, the apparent position of the star is slightly different from its actual position. The star appears slightly higher, that is above, than its actual position when viewed near the horizon. Further, this apparent position of the star is not stationary but keeps on changing slightly. Since the physical condition of the Earth's atmosphere are not stationary, as was the case in the previous paragraph. Since the stars are very distinct, they approximate point-sized source of light. As the path of rays of light coming from the stars goes on varying slightly, the apparent position of the star fluctuates and the amount of starlight entering the eye flickers. The stars sometimes appear brighter and at some other time fainter, which is the twinkling effect. Why do not the planets twinkle? The planets are much closer to the Earth and are thus seen as extended sources. If we consider a planet as a collection of a large number of point-sized sources of light, the total variation in the amount of light entering our eye from all the individual point-sized sources will average out to zero, thereby nullifying the twinkling effect. Advanced sunrise and delayed sunset. The sun is visible to us about 2 minutes before the actual sunrise and about 2 minutes after the actual sunset because of the atmospheric refraction. By actual sunrise, we mean the actual closing of the horizon by the sun, as shown in the figure 11.10, shows the actual and apparent position of the sun with respect to the horizon. The time difference between actual sunset and the apparent sunset is about 2 minutes. The apparent flattering of the sun disk at sunrise and sunset is also due to the same phenomena. Now the scattering of light. The interplay of light with objects around us gives rise to several spectacular phenomena in nature. The blue color of the sky, color of the water in deep sea, the reddening of the sun at sunrise and the sunset are some of the wonderful phenomena we are familiar with. In the previous class, we have learnt about the scattering of light by colloidal particles. The path of the beam of light passing through a true solution is not visible. However, its path becomes visible through a colloidal solution where the size of the particle is relatively larger. Tyndall effect. The Earth's atmosphere is a heterogeneous mixture of minute particles. These particles include smoke, tiny water droplets, suspended particles of dust, and molecules of air. When a beam of light strikes such fine particles, the path of the beam becomes visible. Light reaches us after being reflected diffusely by these particles. The phenomena of scattering of light by the collided particles give rise to Tyndall effect, which you studied in your class 9th. This phenomena is seen when a fine beam of sunlight enters a smoke-filled room through a small hole. The scattering of light makes the particle visible. Tyndall effect can also be observed when sunlight passes through a canopy of a dense forest. Here, tiny water droplets is the mist scattered light. The color of the scattered light depends on the size of the scattering particles. Very fine particles scatter mainly blue light, while particles of larger size scatter light of longer wavelengths. If the size of the scattering particle is large enough, then the scattered light may even appear white. Why is the clear sky blue? The molecules of air and other fine particles in the atmosphere have size smaller than the wavelength of visible light. These are more effective in scattering light of shorter wavelength at the blue end than light of longer wavelength at the red end. The red light has a wavelength about 1.8 times greater than blue light. Thus, when sunlight passes through the atmosphere, the fine particle in air scatter the blue color, that is with shorter wavelength, more strongly than red. The scattered blue light enters our eyes. If the earth had no atmosphere, there would not have been any scattering. Then the sky would have looked dark. The sky appeared dark to passengers flying at very high altitude as scattering is not prominent at such heights. You might have observed that danger signal light are red in color. Do you know why? The red is least scattered by fog or smoke. Therefore, it can be seen in the same color at a distance. Now the color of the sun at sunrise and sunset. Have you seen the sky and the sun at sunset and sunrise? Have you wondered as to why the sun and the surrounding sky appear red? Let us do an activity to understand the blue color of the sky and the reddish appearance of the sun at the sunrise and sunset. Place a strong source, that is S, of white light at the focus of a converging lens, that is L. Consider it as L1. This lens provides a parallel beam of light. Allow the light beam to pass through a transparent glass tank, that is T, containing clear water. Allow the beam of light to pass through a circular hole, that is C, made in the cardboard. Obtain a sharp image of the circular hole on a screen, that is MN, using a second converging lens, that is L2, as shown in the figure 11.11. Dissolve about 200 gram of sodium thiosulfate HAPO in about 2 liters of clean water taken in the tank. About 1 to 2 milliliter of concentrated sulfuric acid to the water. What do you observe? You will find fine microscopic sulfur particles precipitating in about 2 to 3 minutes. As the sulfur particles begin to form, you can observe the blue light from the three sides of the glass tank. This is due to the scattering of short wavelength of minute colloidal sulfur particles. Observe the color of the transmitted light from the four sides of the glass tank facing the circular hole. It is interesting to observe at first the orange red color, and then bright crimson red color on the screen. This activity demonstrates the scattering of light that help us to understand the bluish color of the sky and the reddish appearance of the sun at the sunrise and the sunset. Light from the sun near the horizon passes through thicker layers of air and larger distance in the Earth's atmosphere before reaching our eyes. That is shown in the figure 11.12. However, light from the sun overhead would travel relatively shorter distance. At noon, the sun appears white as only a little of the blue and the violet colors are scattered. Near the horizon, most of the blue light and shorter wavelength are scattered away by the particles. Therefore, the light that reaches our eye is of longer wavelength. This gives rise to the reddish appearance of the sun. So this is about this chapter. I hope you like the video. If you like the video, please like, comment, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching.